Father Miguel sat alone in his dimly lit office, the glow from the monitor casting long shadows across the room. The recent wave of burglaries in the parish had left him uneasy, compelling him to review footage from hidden cameras night after night. His hope was slim, but he prayed for even the smallest clue that might reveal the culprits. Hours crawled by, filled with nothing but the usual flickering lights and shifting shadows. Just as Miguel considered giving up for the night, a familiar figure appeared on the screen. It was Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. The cardinal moved with purpose, completely unaware of the camera capturing his every action. What happened next left Father Miguel frozen in his chair, his heart racing in disbelief. 2 weeks earlier, the town had buzzed with excitement. Word had spread that Cardinal Tagle would visit their parish. The news ignited anticipation in everyone, from devout churchgoers to those who rarely set foot inside, for the cardinal's reputation for compassion and humility had reached far beyond church walls. The days leading up to his arrival were filled with preparations. The pews were polished, the courtyard swept clean, and decorations arranged to honor their distinguished guest. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everyone has a wonderful start to the new ecclesiastical year. Welcome back to St. Sophia's, Father Miguel announced during a video segment made with Cosmos Philly, showcasing the church's updates. On the day of the visit, families arrived hours early to secure a spot near the cardinal. The church filled quickly, and soon even the courtyard overflowed with people eager for a glimpse of the man whose presence brought a sense of hope. Father Miguel stood by the main entrance, fidgeting with his collar. Despite the cool breeze, his palms were damp with nerves. He had met Cardinal Tagle before, but this occasion felt heavier, burdened by the recent crimes and the silent prayer that the cardinal's presence might bring some peace. When a sleek black car arrived, Miguel stepped forward as the cardinal emerged, offering his signature warm smile and a gentle bow. "Your Eminence," Miguel greeted with a deep bow. The cardinal's presence seemed to wash over the crowd like a tide of calm. Parishioners who had been tense now greeted one another with warmth and optimism. Inside, the cardinal moved gracefully through the sea of people, shaking hands, offering blessings, and speaking with heartfelt sincerity that made each person feel seen. Miguel admired him deeply. Despite his high rank, the cardinal exuded humility and grace. But as Miguel watched, something caught his eye. Clara, the church housekeeper, stood by the side aisle, unusually tense. Her hands fidgeted, and she cast repeated glances at the cardinal, her expression unreadable. Was it fear? Concern? Miguel made a mental note to speak with her. Later, Clara lingered in the shadows near the sacristy, her posture rigid, her hands clasped tightly. When the cardinal approached, she hesitated before stepping forward and whispering something to him, words Miguel couldn't hear. The cardinal nodded calmly and Clara exited quickly, her face pale and unreadable. Miguel's stomach churned. Clara had always been discreet, yet now she seemed deeply unsettled, especially in the cardinal's presence. Miguel tried to dismiss it as nerves, but the moment lodged in his mind. That night, a shrill buzz startled him from sleep. The security company was calling. "Father Miguel," came the operator's calm but urgent voice, "we've detected unusual activity near the east corridor. You may want to check camera 3. Dread mounting, Miguel hurried to the church office. The corridors were cloaked in shadow, moonlight casting fractured colors through the stained glass windows. Seated at the monitors, he pulled up the footage. At first, nothing. Then, just after 11 p.m., a figure emerged. His breath caught. It was Cardinal Tagle. The cardinal moved cautiously, glancing over his shoulder with each step, his demeanor far from the composed man seen earlier. Miguel leaned in, anxiety rising. What was the cardinal doing at this hour, alone and secretive? As the cardinal neared Clara's quarters, he paused, checked the hallway, then slipped inside her room. Miguel froze, staring at the monitor. The secrecy, the timing, it didn't make sense. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe the cardinal needed something from Clara, maybe it was an urgent private matter. But the deliberate, furtive movements told another story. Miguel replayed the footage again and again, searching for meaning. The cardinal's behavior was too precise, too methodical. It wasn't just caution, it was calculation. After half an hour with no satisfying answer, Miguel shut off the monitor and rubbed his temples. He would watch and wait, gathering more information. But unease clawed at him. As he walked the darkened halls back to his room, the silence felt heavier than ever. Deep down, Miguel feared that his hesitation might cost him, and his parish, more than he could imagine. The next morning, warm sunlight streamed through the stained glass, casting golden hues along the church walls, but despite the light, the atmosphere inside remained darkened by unspoken tension. Heavy whispers rippled through the congregation, accompanied by furtive glances and uneasy expressions. Somehow, word of the cardinal's late-night movements had spread. Miguel guessed the source was a security company, though he had hoped the matter would remain contained. Now, it was slipping into the parish's collective consciousness, threatening to spiral out of control. "I heard he was seen near Clara's quarters," a woman whispered, her voice barely audible but thick with curiosity. "Surely it's nothing," replied another, though her tone carried an edge of doubt. "Cardinal Tagle is a man of God. There must be an explanation." But not everyone was so charitable. A gruff voice cut through the murmurings. "A man is a man," he said bluntly. "Clergy or not, sneaking around at that hour raises questions." Father Miguel moved through the crowd, his heart sinking with each passing comment. Every word he overheard felt like another stone added to the burden already pressing on his shoulders. He had hoped the incident would remain a private concern, something he could quietly observe while piecing together the truth. Instead, it had become the talk of the parish, threatening to explode into scandal. The unease was palpable, feeding off the whispers and speculation. Miguel's attempts to reassure himself that waiting and watching was the right course began to falter. For the first time, he wondered if he had made a mistake by delaying action. Whatever the truth behind the cardinal's actions, it was clear the matter was far from contained, and Miguel couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to spiral in ways he wasn't prepared to handle. His uncertainty only deepened. The burden he carried was immense. He couldn't ignore what he'd seen, yet confronting Cardinal Tagle without solid evidence felt unthinkable. The cardinal wasn't just a senior clergyman, he was a revered figure in the church. A false accusation could cause irreparable harm, not only to Tagle's reputation but to the church's image and Miguel's own standing. Yet remaining silent weighed heavily on his conscience. His thoughts turned to Clara. Always a quiet presence, today she seemed like a shadow of herself. She avoided eye contact, her shoulders hunched as if bearing an invisible weight. Clara declined to join the other nuns in morning prayers, choosing instead to remain alone, her gaze fixed on the floor. Miguel watched her from a distance, noting her growing isolation. Could her behavior be tied to the cardinal's late-night visits, or was his mind jumping to conclusions, building a story where there was none? That evening, Miguel sat once again before the security monitor, the dim glow of the screen casting shadows on his furrowed brow. His hands trembled slightly as he reviewed the footage from the previous nights, frame by frame. It revealed a troubling pattern: Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle leaving his quarters in the dead of night, walking deliberately through the church corridors, and pausing briefly outside Clara's door before entering. Each visit lasted over an hour, sometimes two, before he returned to his own quarters. Miguel's unease turned to alarm when he spotted a particularly unsettling moment. In one video, the cardinal beckoned Clara toward him. She hesitated before stepping closer, her posture tense, her body language cautious, her movements deliberate. When she eventually left the room, her eyes were red-rimmed as though she had been crying. This wasn't an isolated incident. The consistency of the cardinal's actions suggested something intentional and deeply secretive. Miguel's mind swirled with conflict. He wanted desperately to believe there was an innocent explanation, but the secrecy cast a long shadow over any hopeful assumptions. 4 hours, he sat in silence, weighing his options. To confront Cardinal Tagle meant risking everything: his position, his reputation, and possibly the parish's stability. Yet doing nothing felt like a betrayal of his own integrity and the trust parishioners had placed in him. He was trapped in an impossible dilemma. Suddenly, the sharp buzz of his phone interrupted his thoughts, startling him. He hesitated before picking it up, dreading what might come next. The caller ID displayed the name of the security company, and a sinking feeling settled in his chest. "Father Miguel," the operator said, their tone cautious yet firm. "We've reviewed additional footage and noticed a recurring pattern of activity. Given the circumstances, we feel obligated to inform you that this behavior is highly irregular and may warrant further action." Miguel thanked the caller and hung up, his heart heavy. If even the security company had flagged the cardinal's actions, how much longer could he justify his inaction? His gaze drifted back to the monitor, where a frozen image of Tagle outside Clara's door stared back at him. The cardinal's expression was calm, but the deliberate secrecy of his movements betrayed an unsettling purpose. Miguel leaned back in his chair, the weight of his inevitable decision pressing down like an iron shroud. He thought of the parishioners, and their faith, their trust, and the storm that might come next. Whispered suspicions weighed heavily on Father Miguel's heart as he thought of the trust the congregation placed in the clergy. He thought of Clara, whose withdrawn demeanor hinted at an inner struggle he couldn't yet comprehend, and he thought of Cardinal Tagle, a man admired by many, whose reputation now hung by a fragile thread. As dawn broke, casting a soft golden light over the church, Miguel made his decision. He couldn't ignore what he had seen. The truth needed to be uncovered, but it had to be done with care and respect. An hour later, Miguel stood outside Cardinal Tagle's quarters, his heart pounding so loudly he feared it might echo through the quiet hallway. Clutching his rosary tightly in one hand, he took a deep breath and knocked. The door opened almost immediately. The cardinal stood there, calm and inviting. "Father Miguel," Tagle greeted warmly. "What brings you here at this hour?" Swallowing hard, Miguel stepped inside. The room was modest, a reflection of the cardinal's humility, but Miguel barely noticed. His focus was entirely on the man before him. "Your Eminence," he began, voice trembling, "there is something I must address with you, though it pains me to do so." The cardinal gestured for him to sit, his serene expression unchanged. "Please, speak freely." Miguel hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Over the past several nights, I have reviewed the security footage. It has come to my attention that you've been visiting Clara's quarters late at night. The secrecy, the timing, it has raised questions I can no longer ignore." For a moment, silence fell between them like a heavy veil. Miguel's heart raced as he awaited a response. To Miguel's surprise, Cardinal Tagle's expression softened, not with anger, but with understanding. Folding his hands, he spoke gently. "Sister Clara has been struggling with severe depression. When I arrived, she approached me privately, seeking guidance. She feels isolated, burdened by guilt, and overwhelmed by expectations." Miguel's breath caught as the cardinal's words sank in. Images of Clara's pale face, her hunched posture, and her avoidance of others replayed in his mind. The signs had been there, but he had been too clouded by suspicion to see them clearly. "The late-night meetings were at her request," the cardinal continued. "She felt safer speaking under the cover of darkness, away from prying eyes. I agreed not to hide anything but to protect her dignity. She feared how others might perceive her struggle." Miguel stared at him, the weight of his assumptions crashing down. He felt guilt as he recalled how easily he had let whispers and fear cloud his judgment. "I understand your concern, Father Miguel," Tagle said kindly. "But sometimes, our roles demand discretion. My only intention was to provide her with solace and counsel." Relief washed over Miguel, though it was accompanied by shame. He had doubted the cardinal's integrity and assumed the worst. Lowering his head, Miguel said softly, "I am sorry, Your Eminence. I allowed doubt to blind me." Tagle placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We are all human, Father Miguel. Even in our faith, fear can creep in. What matters is that we act with humility and seek the truth, as you have done." As Miguel left the cardinal's quarters, a sense of peace began to settle over him, though it was tempered by the realization of how easily appearances could deceive. He resolved to approach future situations with a more open heart, understanding the damage assumptions could cause, not only to himself but to others. That afternoon, Clara approached him in the stillness of the chapel. Her movements were tentative, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you, Father, for understanding and keeping my struggles private," she said, her words filled with relief. Miguel nodded, humbled by her trust. "You're not alone, Clara," he replied gently. "We're here to help you carry that burden." A faint smile curled her lips, a glimmer of light returning to her weary expression. As she walked away, Miguel felt a renewed sense of purpose. He promised himself to meet future challenges with both caution and compassion, knowing that mistrust, however well-intentioned, could take a heavy toll. As the chapel returned to silence, Miguel reflected on the lesson he had learned. Appearances could deceive, but empathy and understanding could illuminate even the darkest corners of doubt. Have you ever found yourself making assumptions and expecting the worst, only to discover the truth was far different? Share your experiences in the comments below. We'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time for more thought-provoking discussions. Catch you in the next video.